Hi, my name is Ron Dickson. I served in the U.S. Air Force from 1966 to 1970. I was trying to do some research to find information I could share with my family about the time I served over there, and I ran across a video about a friend of mine, Melvin Rash. I researched it and found out that it was produced by a school in Virginia called York River Academy. So I contacted the producer, Eric Tremblay, and asked him why they produced that film, and he invited me to come to Virginia to add to that. So that's what we're going to do. In the meantime, about me, my first assignment was to Okinawa. It was 18 months, and it ended up being divided into three parts: Okinawa, Thailand, and Vietnam. When I was sent to Thailand, they had moved some planes over there that were flare planes. They dropped flares over the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and they needed aircraft mechanics to take care of those planes, which is what I was. When I went down there, I found out that these flare missions needed extra help, and you could volunteer for them and receive combat pay, and that seemed like a good idea to me at the time. So I went through the training to learn how to do that, and that's where I met Melvin. Melvin was the loadmaster, and that was his regular job. Those planes flew out every night. I only flew on 6 of those planes because I had my regular job to do also. Melvin flew on all of them because that was his job. There was a lot of exciting times on those planes, and my last flight was on May 2nd, 1968. And on May 22nd, 1968, that aircraft was shot down. Melvin and the rest of the crew were lost. The aircraft number was 560477, and it was called Blind Bat 01. That crash site wasn't located. In fact, it wasn't discovered until about 40 years later, and the remains of the crew and what they could find were brought back in 2010, and they were buried at Arlington Cemetery. So my time in Thailand, the time I flew on that aircraft, and my time with Melvin, who was my friend, are special to me. And when I found out the school was doing this video, I had to contact them and do my part. So we're getting ready to go to Virginia, and we'll see you there.
What was life like growing up?
I was born in Miami, Florida, and my father immigrated from Scotland. So he built our house. It was on a dirt road to start. Later, they paved it. It was fun. It was quiet. All my friends were my neighbors because there wasn't anybody else around. Some interesting thing about my father was he really got me interested in how to fix things. And my mother used to say that he would never throw anything away unless it was completely useless, because he would always try to fix it. So that was good. And I have one older brother, so it was good. I enjoyed my childhood.
Was trade school difficult?
Yeah, in high school, but they had a program you could go to a trade school part-time high school, part-time to trade school. And I was interested in airplanes, so they had what's called an A&E program, airframe and engine licensing. If you took to school, you would get that license, and you needed that in order to work for the airlines or something like that. So I went there. It was good. You know, it was smaller classes like this one, and you know, learning things I was interested in. So it was good.
Did any of your siblings end up going to college?
Yes, my older brother went to Duke and got a PhD, and then he ended up teaching there at Dickson until he retired.
So his whole life has been teaching in school.
Did you ever have a want to go to college?
Uh, yes, but he and I were different. You know, I wasn't the student he is. And so when I got out of high school, I went to the community college for 2 years. And Vietnam was really building up then, and I had a student deferment, so I was okay. I didn't have to be drafted because I was in school. But at the end of the 2 years, I had to make a decision to continue on to senior studies or lose my deferment. And I wasn't the student my brother is, so I really didn't know what to do. And my friends started being drafted, and so I decided that I was going to go and join the Air Force and get Vietnam behind me. So I did that.
What was basic training like in Vietnam?
I was being, I don't want to say harassed, but whipped into shape, yelled at, you name it, to get you into the military way. And that always seemed strange to me because I volunteered. And, you know, I kept saying to my friends, I said, you know, they don't have to yell at me, I'm going to do it. I said I would do it, I volunteered. But it's part of the process. So it's 6 weeks of pretty tough discipline and getting you ready. So, looking back on it now, you know, it was a good experience.
How long was your tour of Vietnam?
Well, I enlisted in the Air Force for 4 years, and my first assignment was to Okinawa, and that was an 18-month tour. Most Vietnamese tours were 1 year, but since I was going to Okinawa, I had 18 months. So then after, we can get into this later, but I went to Thailand and into Vietnam, so I ended up spending 13 months there. I didn't have to spend the whole 18 months, but I spent 13 months.
When was your first time flying an
Actually,
aircraft?
when I was in school, part of that 2-year community college was I was interested in airplanes, so I took an aerospace course, and part of that was getting your private pilot license. So I did that part for the private pilot while I was in school. And then once I went in the Air Force, besides flying over there, of course, I went on a search and rescue mission. And, that was interesting. It taught me a lot because there was a downed aircraft out in the ocean, and we had to go look for it. And the interesting thing about that was on a C-130, there was in the back there's a ramp to lower it down so they can drive trucks onto the airplane. And the door, they would open the door wide open, lower the ramp down flat, and then we would be attached with a lanyard to our belts and lay down on the back of the airplane looking over the edge at the water and trying to find wreckage of the airplane. The problem with that was they didn't brief us real good because there was no perspective. You couldn't tell whether you were looking at a stick or a tree. There was nothing to compare the thing to. We never did find anything. That was my first flight over there.
What was daily life like in Vietnam?
It was long days. We worked 12-hour days, 6 days a week. You know, being in the Air Force, you know, I talked to people that's in the Army and the Marines. Their life was a lot different. You know, I got to sleep in the bed at night. Always had a pretty good meal. So when I think of hardships, I can't compare to them. But it was long hours. You had to be ready for anything. Since I was in aircraft maintenance, if a plane broke down somewhere, they would send you. You had to always have a flyaway bag with you. Whether you were on duty or off duty didn't matter. So it was just like always being on call. And then when you did go fix something, you know, you had to do it. You couldn't say, well, I'll do it tomorrow. So sometimes it would get pretty intense.
What was it like going on your first mission?
That was interesting. I always liked airplanes, so I liked to fly. And when I got to Thailand, they had 4 planes that dropped flares and 2 gunships. And they had regular crews, pilots, navigators, co-pilots, and loadmasters. The loadmasters loaded the flares, and so they always needed extra people to help load the flares, and so they gave people like me an opportunity to fly. So I volunteered to do that, and I had to take a special training class to basically learn how to do that. We had to wear a parachute, survival gear. We had to learn how to use that. Interesting things that I thought about that class, because a few things. One of the parts that was in the kit was a map of the terrain, and it was made out of rubber. And there was a radio in the parachute, and the weapon they gave us was a .38 caliber revolver. And I thought that was kind of a joke. The rest has M16s. I've got a pistol. But it wasn't to shoot anybody. It was a signal gun. And we were told if we ever had to jump out of the plane, well, when we put the parachute on, we had to disconnect the radio antenna, because when the antenna came out, it would send off a beacon, and we didn't want that beacon to sound unless we could see somebody rescuing us. The map, they said you're not going to know where you are anyway, so just use it for a raincoat. And that's true, because when we're flying, it's all jungle. You don't know where you are. So that prepared me for what was going to happen. I didn't really get the impact of the danger in doing that until later. At first, it embarrasses me to say that I enjoyed it. Get on the airplane, flying, doing all that it was fun. Until they started shooting at us.
Do you remember meeting Melvin Rash for the first time?
Yeah, Melvin was a loadmaster, and what they would do, it was 4 planes, and if one plane couldn't fly for some reason, that crew would go on the other airplane. So the first time I met Melvin was on a plane called, the call sign was 560533. Melvin was a loadmaster, and on the airplane, everybody has a specific job, and these guys are professionals, so they know exactly what they're doing. One person will set the fuses on the flares so they go off at the right altitude. There's communication with the pilot and other aircraft to know what we're actually going to drop the flares on. And Melvin was, when I knew him anyway, I'm not sure what else he did, but he was one of the people who actually put the flares into the chute to drop out of the plane. So he was able to tell me what to do and show me. Most of the other guys were very focused on their job, but Melvin was, he was the kind of guy that didn't mind showing you what to do. He didn't just say, well, why are you here? He said, well, let me show you what to do. So it was good. It made me more relaxed. It was good. He was a nice guy. Well, I could tell you about some of the other, I'll tell you that later. Some of the other crew members.
Yes, tell us about the other crew members.
Yeah. Well, we were fortunate on our flights. We had one particular person that he did electronic countermeasures to protect the airplane, and I don't know exactly what it was, except that part of it was to do with radar. Because you could hear him talking, he would tell us maybe what kind of airplane was tracking us, or if there was a radar-controlled gun on the ground that was tracking us. He could tell what was happening, and he would relay that to the pilot. And the experience I had with him was I was curious about it, so I asked him what it was, and you would have thought I was asking to divulge national secrets. He wouldn't say a word to me. But he protected us. So, you learn really who to bother, who not to bother, and that it was a serious job. So that was a learning experience. He was doing his job. I was pestering him. Yeah. And of course, the pilot, the co-pilot, and they all. The pilot, Colonel Mason, he was an older guy. He was a lieutenant colonel. The thing that impressed me the most about him was up until that time, all the officers I ever dealt with were like lieutenants or captains, and some of them would make sure you knew you were enlisted and they were officer. But Colonel Mason he was like the father of the airplane. He would always give a briefing before we flew. When we come back, he would ask how everybody was. It was really good. One particular flight, C-130s, they do a lot of what's called assault takeoffs and landings, where you'll come in really at a steep angle. And we never flew pressurized. So if you ever been in an airplane and you pop your ears, that was pretty common. And we did one of those, and I was really suffering. And when we got off the airplane, he's, as he always did, he seen everybody was, and I'm obviously in trouble with my ears. And he said I should have told him that he would have taken the plane back up again. And that just amazed me that he would have done that just for me. So, those little things stick with you. Somebody asked about daily life. It was long days, like I mentioned before, 12-hour days, 6 days a week. You were either, in my case, repairing a plane or being sent somewhere to fix the plane so it could come back, or flying on these missions. So daily life was very busy. You had one day off that you could have some recreation. Yeah. That was daily life. Oh, well, it was like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. It was a long, long day. Rain or shine, didn't matter.
In a literal sense, what was the food like?
Well, Air Force, the food was good. Like I say, I always ate in the chow hall. The only time I ate anything strange was sea rations. And that was like like a box lunch, only it was canned food, canned eggs and bacon, eggs and ham. Things that didn't look like you'd expect it to, but they tasted okay.
So they looked fake.
Yeah, well, it was, you get ham and eggs, you expect ham and eggs. You don't expect this
Glob.
this glob.
So like cafeteria food.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Okay. Do you by any chance remember how many missions you went on?
Well, just 6 missions, 6 of the flare missions. You weren't required. It was a voluntary thing. If you volunteered to go on those missions, you took this special training class. But because I had to still keep doing my regular job, I only went on 6. I would have liked to have gone on more, but you still have to do your regular job. Mm-hmm.
Were there any close calls on any of the missions you went on?
Yes. The same crew, Melvin, Colonel Mason, we were flying and we were going to relocate to another area, and the flight engineer, the way a C-130 set up, you have the pilot and the co-pilot. Right behind him, a little bit higher, is the flight engineer. And so he came back in the back and wanted somebody else to go sit in his seat to watch out front. We always had to have people watching for anything that was going to attack us. I'm not sure what he was going to do, but he asked me to go sit and watch up front. So I was sitting up front. And we were just moving to another area. We weren't expecting anything to happen. And my job was to look right straight out the front of the plane to see if anybody was shooting at us from that area. And that's one of those things where I wish that I had had maybe 5 minutes more instructions. Somebody tell me what exactly what I'm looking for will look like when I see it. You know, because I'm used to seeing the 37 millimeters coming up as tracers. Well, I'm looking out the front of the airplane. I see a flash on the ground, and you know, it's just a flash. I don't know what it was, and literally 2 or 3 seconds later, this missile came right up over the nose of the plane. I mean, it was so fast. You know, I couldn't even say, "What's that?" It's just the fastest thing I ever saw. And that really sunk in later, because I'm wearing a parachute. I've got this survival stuff. I had to jump out of the plane. But I realized that, you know, there's no getting out of that airplane. If that had hit us, I wouldn't have even got off the flight deck. So, you know, the more I did these flights and the more I did it, the more I realized how dangerous it was. You know, and like I say, you know, I feel bad about enjoying them when I first started, because it wasn't anything to enjoy. But it was learning. It taught me to be sympathetic to other people, and it taught me to recognize fear. That incident shook up everybody on the plane, because we went back to Ubon when that happened. You know, I don't know, probably because the area was too heavily defended, we did avoid areas like that a lot. And I imagine that's why we went back. I was glad we did, because I didn't want anything else to happen. But that was the most scary part of it, the closest call.
Tell us more about Melvin Rash.
I only flew on 6 of those missions, and so, you know, it was limited time with him and only on the airplane. But his personality was, you know, I think it was like mine, because we kind of gravitated together. And, you know, he was a nice guy. I mean, he would tell you how to do what he did. He would, you know, we'd make comments. We got shot at a lot, and so sometimes we'd make jokes about that, you know, before it got serious. You know, when we did get shot at, it was with anti-aircraft guns, 37 millimeter, and they had tracer rounds, so you could see them coming up at you. And at first it was interesting, because you know, they would turn the gun to follow the airplane. Of course, the dots would turn, kind of snake up at you. So we would comment on that happening. You know, they're, you know, long ways away or something like that. It was, you know, regular conversations that I didn't have with the other guys, because they were too focused on the job. Fortunately, Melvin's job was more casual. You know, I'm sure he did other things when I wasn't there, but when I was with him, we were loading flares, and so it was downtime between actually having to launch them. And I regret that, you know, the off-duty times, there wasn't really a lot of off-duty. We worked 12 hours a day, but you know, he was part of that crew and I was part of another group, so when we weren't on the airplane, we didn't really hang out together. So basically what I know about him is those times when we would make a joke about something happening on the airplane, or loading the flares and different things like that. Yeah.
Do you ever go on any missions with Melvin?
Well, those flare dropping missions, they were called blind bat missions, and that's what they were. Like I said, there was 4 planes. 2 of them flew in one area and 2 in the other areas. And it was blind bat 01 and 02. The first plane that went out was 01. That was always the one I went on, was the first plane, because I had my regular job to do also. So we'd fly out about 5:30 in the evening and come back about 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, or later, depending on how much fuel we had. And then I have to go back to work the next day. So the missions were, like I say, it bothers me to say that I enjoyed it at first, because it was serious work. And even when we started being shot at first, it was just interesting. But then when they would actually come close to the plane, and the most scary part about that was you're in the back and you're watching this gun, and those tracers are moving over to where the airplane is, and you're not flying the airplane, so you're depending on somebody else getting out of the way. It became very scary. When I first started doing it, you step in the plane, it was an adventure. Then after that, you'd remember what happened last time and wonder how it's going to go this time. One particular time, when you're in the back of the airplane, unless you're actually looking out the back or one of the paratroop doors, you can't see what's going on outside. And we made a really dramatic evasive maneuver that nobody was expecting. And so you become weightless for a second. And I remember I was holding a flare, and suddenly, I don't have good traction on the ground anymore. I'm rolling across the floor. So there was moments like that made you realize that it was real. We were actually fighting a war. People were trying to shoot us down. I remember, specifically I remember the day and the hour that the war became real. It was on May 1st, 1968. And this crew, we were flying on 0477, the plane that got shot down. And the plane had a starlight scope. It was a night observation device. It would magnify the view and also use the moonlight, starlight to see in the dark. It was night vision. So you could see things on the ground. And we flew usually about 10,000 feet. Flew any higher than that, there's less oxygen. Flew any lower than that, you were more apt to get shot down. So, but sometimes we would drop down low. And we were called to a spot that had a bunch of trucks. And usually when there's a truck convoy like that, there was a 37mm gun defending it somewhere. And so there's, it's a long, complicated thing, but there's other aircraft there that are forward air controllers, airborne command and control center, and they would direct the operations. And so we were sent to this area where somebody had seen these trucks, and there was always an F-4 fighter that flew with us that would carry the bombs or whatever they were going to drop on it. And so this was something that had been all arranged, and so we went there and we dropped the flares. We dropped markers first. There's flares with no parachute. They would just fall straight to the ground. And they would establish a reference point on the ground that they would direct the bomber to, the direction from that marker is where the target was. And this particular F-4 had a 2,000-pound guided bomb on it. I don't know when they exactly started testing them, but this was new in '68. And so the word was that this bomb was not going to miss. It was going to hit the target. So everybody was excited to see what was going to happen. And when that bomb went off, it blew the trees down in a big circle, the shock wave. It was like throwing a rock in a pond. And it was so dramatic that the war changed for me right then, because I knew that those weren't just trucks down there. Those were people driving the trucks. There may have been people who were fighting us, but they were people just like me. And ever since then, it was different. I couldn't do it anymore without thinking about the people. Up until then, it was just trucks and guns. It was, never thought about who might have been down there. But that was right about midnight on May 1st. That actually was the last flight I took on that airplane too. But that was a dramatic moment for me. I've actually had a lot of guilt about that, you know, even though I just had one little part about it.
What was your reaction when you heard the blind bat 01 had been shot down?
Okay, well, the last flight I took in that plane, I actually got hurt on that flight, hurt my wrist. And so I didn't fly anymore after that. And then it was about a week later that I went back to Okinawa. And I flew in that plane on May 1st through May 2nd. And on May 22nd, that's when I got shot down. So I was back in Okinawa for, well, we had to stop off in the Philippines first, but I was back about 2 weeks. And someone said that one of our planes got shot down. And, you know, at that moment, you know, everybody's concerned, but I had no idea who was on the airplane. And then as more information started coming up, we realized which crew it was. And, you know, it made me very sad because the last flight I was on was this missile that flew at us. And, you know, it bothered me a lot because I knew how I felt when that happened. And I didn't know what it was that took the plane down. But whatever it was, they, you know, they experienced the same thing that I did, only it was, you know, a very bad day for them. So it was, you know, those things add up. You know, each incident adds up to how you feel. They actually had an assignment down to Vietnam, and I had always avoided going to Vietnam, but I volunteered for that one. They sent me down to Cam Ranh Bay, which was a pretty safe place. But like I say, you know, the war changed for me when I saw what was happening and had more personal experience in it. And so I wasn't so anxious just to stay in a safe place. I decided that I was going to go wherever they wanted me to go. And so they sent me to Vietnam. And actually, you asked earlier about how long I was there. I was there till I ended my tour. It was 13 months combined. Okinawa, Ubon, Thailand, and Vietnam. So it was, and there were some interesting things that happened there too. One thing that I laugh at now, I mean, I laughed then too, even though it scared me, was whenever planes had major repairs, maybe more than one engine replaced or more than one prop or something major, they always had to take it up on a functional check flight. So I volunteered for all of those. I still like to fly. And usually it was on something that was in my specialty, so you know, you could evaluate what was happening and put your input. This particular flight, I had no idea why we were flying. I just jumped on the airplane, and I'm standing behind the flight engineer, and we're getting ready to take off. Only we're not taking off. We're just tearing down the runway. And I've taken off from there. We're passing all the spots we should be airborne, and I'm getting worried. And the pilot fighting the control yoke, you know, and I'm thinking this is it. This is the end of my tour. And we stopped at the end of the runway, and he's all smiles. Everything's great, you know. Good job, boys. And I'm thinking we almost died. You know, we never even got off the ground. And later I found out we were checking a vibration in the landing gear, so we weren't supposed to take off. So after that, I always asked what was wrong with the airplane, so I'd know. Kind of taught me a lesson too. Yeah. that was a funny part of the experience.
Let's pause again for a minute. Yeah, that one.
What was it like to be stationed in Cam Ranh
Cam Ranh Bay.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't speak well.
Cam Ranh Bay is a large base. It's right on the ocean. It's a sand pit. It's very sandy. And it was, there would be some enemy action, but nothing really to speak of. So it was a interesting place to be. Very sandy, very windy. And they had a good beach. You could have a recreation area there on the beach. So Cam Ranh Bay was not bad.
Did you guys do any like fun games, sunburns?
The only thing you could do is really go to the beach because it was right there. And it wasn't like in Thailand you could go into town. Okinawa was very safe, but Vietnam usually didn't go off base. It was possible, but we never did. And so I flew back on a commercial plane when I landed in San Francisco. Practically the first thing that happened was this one particular guy came up to, I don't remember what he said to me, but it was obvious that he was not going to welcome me home. And there happened to be a military policeman stand by, and he saw what was getting ready to happen. So he kind of came over and, stopped that incident before it really happened. But then he gave me a hard time about wearing my fatigue uniform. So he took me to a kind of an isolated place and had me wait there until my next flight occurred so I could get on the plane. And the thing that bothers me about that mostly is that they basically hid me away so people couldn't see me. And when I see soldiers coming back, from Afghanistan and now wearing their fatigue uniforms and welcome back, and I welcome them back, I clap for them. I didn't really want anybody to thank me. I didn't feel like I was doing anything to be thanked for, but at least welcome me home. Not give me a hard time and not hide me because I was in my uniform. Those things have stuck with me for a long time. And I try to tell people now when I meet them, I welcome them home and I thank them. Because most Vietnam veterans didn't get that. I didn't have the experiences that some people said, but that particular experience was in a very dark time of my life. I was not ready to have a confrontation, coming home for the funeral of my father. So it was just one of those things that sticks with you.
Didn't help that people weren't happy with you.
No, it's I'm wearing a hat now. I got Vietnam veteran hats. I would never have worn those back then. No, I do. I actually help out in there's a VA clinic near my house, and there's a group of veterans that meet there. It's a support group, veterans helping other veterans, and I help facilitate that group. So it gives me a chance to sort of give back what I know. Help other guys.
Could you communicate with your family back home?
I did one time. We didn't have cell phones back then, so there was it's called a Mars station. It's a military auxiliary radio station, radio service. And what it is it's like ham radios, so they would relay your message across back to the States. I thought that was going to be very good to be able to talk to my parents, but it was very frustrating because you would say everything you wanted to say and then never get relayed back to them. and then they would say what they wanted to say to you, and it would get relayed back. So it was literally like talking to somebody with a 30-second delay between everything you said. And a lot of times, the things that I would say, when they would answer back, weren't really, related to what I had asked them. So it was very frustrating. That was the last time I was able to speak to my father. But the bad part is it was a very frustrating communication.
If you could go back, knowing what you know now, would you do anything differently?
Probably not. I feel like I did a good job. I'd just be, do the best I can, be more aware of what's happening, and try not to be surprised at things. I would do it again.
If you could, to write on that question, if you can go back and tell your previous self something that you know now, what would you tell him?
Yeah, I would tell him not to be afraid, and write a journal. I have a lot of photographs that I didn't write the occasions on the back. A lot of memories I have. It's been 50 years, so it's hard to remember the little details. So I would tell myself not to be afraid, do the best you can, and write a journal. And when I came back to the States, I had asked for a humanitarian reassignment to be close to home, but they wouldn't do that. But I was supposed to go back to Vietnam, but they did end my tour there and sent me to Dover, Delaware, and that was totally different. It was 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. It was a job. It was a regular job, and so I was able to get another couple of promotions. When I got promoted to staff sergeant, that was like a threshold that suddenly you were not always the guy doing things. You were the guy telling other people to do things. So it became much more relaxed. I still went on TDYs as much as I could. Went to Goose Bay, Labrador to repair a plane up there. Just because it was cold, I wanted to see what it was like. Let's see. Oh, in November 1st, I got promoted to staff sergeant, and November 8th, I think I went to Goose Bay, Labrador to fix that plane. And then November 24th, the other blind bat plane, 533, got shot down. And I went right back into that emotional difficulty, even though I didn't know what the crew was because it had been a year. I knew that somebody died on that plane. And so when things were just getting back to normal again, normal 8-hour-a-day job, it kind of reminded me of the war again. So then I had to get past that. But I did. I'm working with the VA now to help other veterans cope what I can. We don't do psychological counseling because we're not qualified, but people will have questions, and just like the students here, you help each other out. I do get medical care through the VA. Like I say, I got hurt on that plane, so they take care of me. People complain about the VA, but it's just it's a process. They've always been good to me.
Do you ever get shot with any bullets?
No, thank goodness, never did. No. The trouble is, the bullets that were shooting at me, they were 37 millimeter anti-aircraft fire.
Ooh.
So you don't just get shot with one of those, so I'm glad that never happened. I have to laugh because the only time I ever got shot at was when I was based in Thailand. Never got shot at in Vietnam. I think that's kind of ironic.
Did your parents do anything special for you while you were in Vietnam?
They did. You mentioned food earlier. My grandmother was from Scotland, and she used to make real good shortbread. And so she would send me shortbread. So that was, I still like that. My youngest daughter makes shortbread and hadn't done it in a while, but she sends it too now. But I remember that, getting the shortbread. And my father and I, we bought 2 tape recorders, and I took one, he kept the other. And we would record messages and send them in the mail back and forth. So, and I've still got those tapes. I want to find somebody that can maybe not restore them, but be able to transfer them to something so I can listen to again. That I'd like very much.
What were your opinions on the presidents during the time?
My opinion there, and this is something that was very frustrating for me, because when we would fly over different targets, we would fly over the same ones over and over again, because there were certain rules of engagement. If we were too close to a village, or we weren't supposed to go into Cambodia. So, those rules were very frustrating. You've got somebody trying to shoot you down, and you can't do anything about it, so go away. The next time you flew, you'd have the same problem again. So that was troubling to me, because it seemed like we were just fighting the same thing over and over again. And on my level of participation, it was just the general feeling that Washington is directing the actions of the war, and not the people who are actually fighting it. That's really the only feeling I had. I've learned more about now, why they did some of those things from learning about history, and I don't hold it against them. It was the way it was. It was very frustrating not to be able to actually fight the war. And music.
Yeah, music was.
Yeah.
There any specific songs back then that spoke to you?
Yeah. Well, I always liked the Doors, Rolling Stones. A lot of the protest songs that were going on. The trouble with those songs is, as much as I like them, it's very difficult to listen to them, because it brings out an emotional part of me that I'd rather just remember that I liked them than listen to them again. But I mean, it's when you're actually living that and listening to it, it just draws you directly to it. So I like the music. I like the music, but I don't play it.
So you never learned any instruments?
Well, I learned how to play the guitar, but I was never very good at it. I could read music, and I could, I was not an entertainer. I was a plucker. But I'd say I could play something. It's just not good at it. Okay.
In your opinion, what movie best represents Vietnam?
But the trouble with the movies is, I've never liked war as entertainment.
The question I was thinking about was, did you have any particular feelings about if you maybe had some memories about the fall of Saigon, where you were when that happened? Maybe how did it make you feel? And then looking back on the war in general, how do you feel about it overall?
Well, the fall of Saigon, I don't remember the exact time that happened, but it was after I got out of the Air Force. I got out in November of 1970. So Saigon fell after that. So once I got out, I didn't follow the war that closely. So, you know, it was disappointing. But, you know, I really expected it. You know, the trouble with Vietnam, there's a lot to learn about it. And, you know, we're fighting somebody else's civil war. You know, and it's, you know, it's hard to say what the true objective was. You know, you just fight until enough people get killed that you decide to stop fighting anymore and come home. So it seemed like a big loss that didn't have a lot of purpose. You know, I think back to the number of people that were killed in Vietnam, and I can't think of a good reason why. So that bothers me. Well, something, you know, I mentioned about the rules of engagement, and I know those rules are to protect innocent civilians, but, you know, if I'm going to war and drop bombs on people, somebody is not going to come home. You know, we're not just going to slap each other around and have to go fight them again.